Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to episode 2 of the LBTATools List Controller video series. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're able to follow along with the very last lesson. In today's video, I'm going to move on and show you how to put a header at the very top of our list right here. So you see we have our messages, we have 3 cells here, and inside of the finished version of our application, we have a horizontal header that allows us to swipe left and right and show these cells very easily. And the way to do this is actually very simple using a different tool called LBTA ListHeaderController. It's pretty much what this guy is subclassing. So if you command and click into this here, you'll get into the actual source documentation for this file. You can see we have LBTA ListHeaderController. If you command click into that, you'll find the definition right here. And this is pretty much all the code that powers our list controller right here. But I don't really want to discuss all that much what exactly is going on here. So instead of looking at the documentation, what I'm going to do is to show you how to very easily put up this header right here at the very top of Girly McGriddle. So the question is, how exactly do we do this? Well, the typical way of rendering out a header is to make sure that your collection view inside of your collection view controller, make sure it registers some kind of header through this method for supplementary view of kind. And then the other thing you need to do is to override view for supplementary. I believe it's this one here. And then return your header. And then also do something like size or ref size header. And let's see, yeah, this guy looks okay. We need this one, and this one to make it all work. So instead of typing out all this code, what I'm going to do instead is to, let's say, remove this guy, and I'm going to use the LBTA list header controller instead. So let me show you how this is going to work. List header controller, this guy expects the very similar first two generics here, the cell class, which is T, the actual items inside of your list controller, and then the third object, or the third generic rather, is the actual header class. So I'm going to replace the T with the message cell, and then the U is the message here. And then the header is something that we have to create. So let me just create it really quickly here. So let's call it the header. And this guy is going to have to be a UI collection reusable view like so. If you don't know exactly what this is, every time you register a header for your collection view, you have to use a reusable view for the header. It's a little bit confusing, but that's just what you got to do. Now inside of here, I'm going to use init, override the initializer, call the frame with frame, and you have to also provide that. So I'll just make sure to type that in really quickly. I'm going to say background color equals .red. Okay, so this guy is obviously not doing very much. It's only going to set the background color to this red color. So hopefully you are able to follow along with that. And now that I have my header class, I'm going to replace the header here. And this is pretty much the declaration of our list header controller with these 3 generics. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this entire thing here with this guy. So how am I going to do that? Well, let me just copy or cut this rather and replace this entire guy here. So let me just do that. Well, actually, let me just make this a little bit easier to read. I'm going to cut this up here, and then I'm going to take this and put that up here just so that you can see the difference between these two superclass declarations. This is LBTA list header controller. This guy is a list controller. Only difference is we can pass a header inside of this declaration here. Okay, so enough talk there. If you run your code the way that it is right now with the header controller, everything is going to appear the same thing. And the reason is because we're not actually providing a size for the header. So what you have to do is kind of similar to what I mentioned earlier. You have to return some kind of size. And if you don't do this, then the header doesn't exactly render out. So let's use the entire width of the view. And why don't we give this guy a 200? I always like to use 100 or 200. These guys are totally arbitrary. So 200 looks like that. You can obviously bump this up to 300 and you'll see the change there. So let's use 150. It's going to be decreased by 50 pixels. And here you go. This is what 150 looks like. So looking pretty nice. And as you can see, we didn't really have to type out all that registration code, and we don't have to dequeue our header. The ListHeaderController automatically does all of the heavy lifting for us. So, again, we want to make sure our controller classes are pretty slim and clean. And this is just one way of reducing all of that tedious boilerplate code that you have to type out otherwise. Okay, so now the question is, how do we move on and render out this guy inside of our header? Well, this is actually very similar to rendering out a vertical list, similar to what we're doing here, right? So this is the vertical list of messages. And all we have to do is to render out a horizontal list. And so before I get into this horizontal collection view, why don't I render out the new matches and messages label right below. So this is pretty easy. So let's call this the new matches label. And I will use the label constructor. Again, all of this stuff is coming from the LBTATools library right here. Make sure you install it through CocoaPods and you should be okay. So this guy, let's say new matches. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys know how to do this stuff already. So let's just say font size of 12, and I'll grab a text color literal. And let's grab this over here and double click on the other, click on the little eyedropper tool, and make sure you click on the right area of your screen. Okay, so that looks good. I'm going to paste that, and let's call this the messages label. So this guy is the one on the bottom, so messages label. And let's just grab this over here, modify the text just a little bit, and that looks good. So that's okay. And in the middle is going to be some kind of view. So let's just call this the horizontal view for now. UI view and background color of .blue. Inside of the initializer, I'm going to lay out all of this stuff. Let me keep the red for now. I'm going to stack all of these components vertically. So this guy is vertical, vertical, and vertical. So in other words, let's just use a simple UI stack view. This is a LBTATools stack method. It's going to stack the new matches label and then the horizontal view and then the messages label all vertically inside the entire header. You can look at the documentation for this code, but before I do that, you can see the messages is kind of showing up. Let me just remove the red color here. That way we can actually see the red text color for those two labels. Okay, that is looking very small. So let me bump the font up to 14. And then what I can also do is I can pad the top of the stack view here. So I actually like to put this horizontally like this, just so that I can see what this guy is doing. So I'm going to say with margins, or something else that you can do is pad the top with a value of 16. And I think I should be good. In terms of the spacing up here. So this is where I'm trying to do. And that's the pad right there. And you can also pad the left and the bottom as well. Something that you need is a spacing between this little stack view component of views. So you can say comma and spacing of, let's say 12 for the actual spacing. You can obviously make your own vertical stack view. It's very easy if you just look at the code. This guy is looking better. One thing I'll do for now is I'm going to pad the left with 16 as well. You're going to see a bug related to the horizontal collection view when you do this, but I'll take care of that in just a little bit. As you can see with the tools framework, setting up all this UI is very, very simple. We have a simple stack view that contains 3 components here, some spacing, and some other customizations there. So pretty easy stuff. If you use native UIKit code, you actually have to type out a lot of layout constraints, and that's not all that fun. So I do recommend using your custom libraries to make your UI layout process easier. So this is looking pretty good. We have our blue horizontal view in the middle. And now, how exactly do we fit a collection view inside of this blue blob? Well, the typical way of doing this with native UIKit code is to modify this guy into a UI collection view like this, and then use a frame of, let's use 0 because we're using auto layout. We pretty much don't care about this frame property. And this guy, you want to use something like a collection view flow layout. And once you have that, your horizontal view will now be a collection view. By default, the collection view is going to have a black background color. That's why it's appearing black like that. Now, something else you have to do whenever you set up a collection view is very similar to a collection view controller. You have to set up the horizontal collection view as, let's see, the data source equals self, or whatever the data source is going to be. Your collection view's delegate also needs to be self. And because self is that, you're going to have to type out a lot of this code that I really hate typing out. So UI collection view delegate. You have to set up all this stuff. And then you also have to say number of items in section and also self or item at. So again, I really don't want to see all this code inside of my view classes. And that's the reason why we are using LBTATools. I can just wipe out all this stuff, remove these two protocols, and I can actually remove this code as well. So let me just clean up what I did. All that code is just very, very hard to look at, and also hard to maintain, and just very painful to keep track of overall. So instead of using a UI collection view, you can actually use another list controller. So what exactly do I mean? Well, I'm going to define another list controller up here, so class, and I'm going to call this the matches controller. This guy is going to subclass the list controller like so. And again, it demands two generics to be filled out here, so T and U. So T is your cell class, so you can think of that as cell, and U is going to be the item. So what exactly is going to go inside of here for the cell? Well, I'm going to declare a cell. Let's call it the match cell. And this is going to have to be a list cell. And let's just use a UI color for the generic for now. The item is going to be of type UI color, or whatever you put in here. And let's use the M here. Make sure to monitor when this guy is being set. I'm going to set the background color to be the actual item that we pass into the list later on. And for the matches controller, all we have to do now is to replace the match, let's see, the cell here with the actual cell we want to render inside of this horizontal list. So this is just a match cell. And then this on the right side, the actual item for my list for now is going to be a UI color object. Okay, so now that we have that, we can go through the actual simple exercise of setting some items up on this guy. And because items is this array of UI colors here, you can kind of see what items is. So items is UI color, so that's what that is. You can just put something like red, blue, whatever colors you want inside of this bad boy, purple, like that. So this is going to represent this controller here. All of the controller or collection view controller methods are already set up. I'm going to replace this horizontal view here now with this instead. So let's just say matches controller. You can declare this with a scroll direction, and let's use horizontal like that. And now what you want to do is, this guy is actually a controller now. So let's call this the matches controller. And then down here, you want to replace this black view, which is the horizontal view, replace that with the controller.view. And I'm just going to run this now. You're going to see your cells popping up inside of your little black area that was there before now. And these cells are just simply the red, the blue, the green, and the purple. You can see once you have this list controller component set up, you can render out these very, very common UI patterns very, very easily. You just have one cell for each one of these guys here. And then you have your controller that lays out everything horizontally. Now, one thing that you probably want to do is to make sure that the sizing of these cells are correct. So in other words, you want to conform to the delegate flow layout protocol, obviously. And then size for item, this is just good old UIKit code. Yet again, return the size variable because, it's expecting you to return a size. And down here, I'm going to use a value of something like 100, and let's use view frame.height. Now, some of you guys might be confused as to what this value is going to turn out to be, but basically the view for our matches controller is pretty much this area right here in the previous black. And then because the entire area has this height here from right here to right here, view frame height pretty much gives you something like, 80 or whatever this value needs to be. Okay, so the last thing you need to do to render out this entire view here is to fill out your match cell with this image view and also a name at the very bottom. I am not sure if I want to do that for you because that's pretty easy. But maybe I will just grab some information from the message cell. So let me just do this really quickly. I'm going to grab the image view. So this is the message cell. It has two labels, which I'll use inside of this match cell here. Let's see if I can do this really quickly. So I'm changing the item here. And instead of doing that, let's use a stack. So I'm going to stack the image view. And also, let's see the name label. And I think I want to use an alignment center. So that's all I think I want to do. I might have to set this image view's image. So image view dot image equals, let's see, UI image and named, and let's say girl. So I'm gonna try to render this match cell now with these two elements inside of it. Let's see what we get. So that looks pretty close, I guess, but you're gonna have to round this guy off. One thing that you might be able to do is to just do this here. So I'm gonna say circle image view, and let's use a width of, I think 80 might be okay. So let's use 80. And this guy UI image, name, let's see, girl. So there's a custom class called circular image view inside of LBTATools that helps you set up a circular image. You do have to be a little bit careful about this class, but if you know how to operate it, you can get a circular image view just by using this guy. Okay, if you replace the, or not replace, but if you remove the background color setting now, it's going to look just like so. So you can drag this left and right. And you know, that's pretty much what it looks like. You might want to change the font down a little bit. Obviously, you can customize this to look however you want it to look. And that looks pretty nice. Let's give it some spacing of, let's say 4. And let's try to run this again just to make sure everything looks okay. And I think the last thing I might want to do is to fix this problem. So this really isn't related to LBTATools, but every time you pad the left side of a collection view like that, then it's going to clip off this left edge. So what I'm referring to is in the header, we have the new matches label and then the matches controller view, which is this guy. And then we have the message label right here. So the reason why we see this clipping is because we're padding the left side of this entire stack view by 16. So you can take that away and you can run your code again. You'll see that everything is going to shift back to the left side. So this guy right here is on the left edge now, and everything is kind of okay with the collection view controller now. The only thing we have to fix is this guy. So how do we actually fix the messages and let's see, the matches? So this guy, I believe, is gonna have to say messages right here. The way I'm going to hack a fix into this little top area, the left side, is to hack in a view. Let's use hstack. And can I do this? Maybe, let's see. Yeah, this guy is kind of okay. I'm going to use a hstack of the new matches label, and I can pad this guy left by 16, and I'll do the same thing for the messages label. So let's just grab this and put that in here. This is kind of a hack, but I believe it's okay. It's not going to affect the performance at all. But if you do this, you can pad this thing on the left side by that amount, and you can now scroll this left and right. You won't get any clipping on this left edge, which is exactly what we want, right? Alrighty guys, I know that a lot of this stuff that we just typed out here might seem like a lot of code, but it's a very good habit to form to make sure that all of your components are nicely separated into classes like this. So you see we have our header, we have our matches controller, and then we also have our match cell. Now, last thing I would like to do to wrap up this entire lesson is to make sure that these match cells up here, so you see match cell, I want to make sure that they are rendering out dynamic information. So in other words, you see we have water, wind, Robbie Robster, and Kelly at the very end here. I want to make sure that we're showing different information. And before I actually get into that, I would like to briefly go over how you would figure out what the heck some of these little methods are doing, such as this scroll direction and also this stack, right? So if you don't know what it's doing, what you can do is to look inside of the documentation. So what you do is you command click into this guy. It'll take you into the declaration here, command click into the list controller, and just command click one more level. So this guy, if you click on the top right corner, you can scroll down to the actual scroll direction initializer, which is this guy. You can see that it's very simple. We are declaring a collection view flow layout. We set the actual scroll direction on it. By default, this guy is using a vertical. That's kind of what this equal signs means. And then down below, we are just calling the initializer with the actual layout. So pretty simple stuff there. We can go back a couple of pages. And down below, if you command click into the stack right here, you see we're stacking the new matches. We are stacking the match controller and then the message label. Just command click into this. You'll see that this is actually just calling a underscore stack, which is this method up here. All this guy is doing is we're creating a UI stack view. We're using the 3 parameters of axis right here, which is default vertical, spacing, and alignment. We're setting those properties up on the stack view. We're adding the stack view into our actual view, which is going to be our header up here. And then we're just filling the entire header. We finally return this stack view just so that we can chain some methods onto it. So when I say chain, I'm talking about we're chaining this pad left 16 and pad top 16. This just makes it a lot easier to type. I find that you can actually type out a lot of this native UI kit code yourself, but it's a lot of code. I do a lot of development work for my clients. And I just find that I type out this code so consistently that having these shortcuts here is actually really, really helpful. So hopefully this tools library helps you out as well. Now, with all that being said, let's kind of move on to actually rendering out these new match cells up here, right? So we have water, wind, and Robbie Robster. And the way to actually do this is very similar to declaring our message model in the last episode. And I am going to declare a new struct up here. We are going to call it a match. Now for the fields of match, I can see that for this cell right here, we have an image and then also some kind of name. So that's the 2 fields that I'll choose for now. I'm going to call it image name and also a username. Let it be of type string. So whenever you see your cell and whatever you want to render out, usually just declare these properties like so. And now that I have this struct model class, the match cell is going to be responsible for rendering out a match like that. So previously we're using a UI color, which is just some dummy class that I like to use to, show what's going on. So I'm going to replace the UI color with the match over here. And once you do that, you got to make sure that the item actually is a match now. So if you don't want to copy and paste the code, you can always do that and it'll provide you with the code that you need. So let's just replace that and remove this green ugly comment and we should be fine. Last thing you need to do is for the actual matches controller, this guy is actually using a match cell that uses the match as a generic. So you're gonna make sure the item right here is also a match, okay? So that might take a little bit of time to get used to and get accustomed to this workflow here, but once you get used to it, it should be pretty fast. Now, once you modify the match here, the items array right here is also an array of matches. So in other words, this right here doesn't really make that much sense. So I'm going to call init. You'll see it comes up with the match initializer right here. And for the image name, I'm going to use girl. And let's see, for the actual user name, let's call this girl Bobby Bobster. So let's see if that is going to work. I'm going to just run this because I don't want to type out too much code. You'll see a 1 cell inside of your header now. So this is the 1 cell being rendered out because we only have 1 item inside of this items array. So matches controller is just this guy, right? So just this guy here. And if you copy this guy a couple of times, you'll see more cells appear. So let's see, paste that one more time. You'll see a second cell show up and that's what you get. Now the match cell is up here, and every time you have a new item inside of your array for the actual controller, you have to make sure that whenever the item is being set on that cell, you can simply say image view dot image equals UI image and named, and let's say item dot image name, and we'll do the same thing for the name label dot text equals item dot username like that. So previously it was saying username for the actual label down here. So now it says Bobby Bobster. If you want to modify the actual line to be 2 lines of code or 2 lines of text, I think you might be able to say this. A number of lines is 2. Not sure if it's going to render out completely. But we'll see what we get here. So Bobby Bobster still looks like that. And maybe I want to use a value of 70 for the actual width of the image view. Let's just kind of see what that looks like. You're going to have to obviously modify these guys to be whatever they need to be, but that is looking okay for now. Let me just remove that and bring that back to 80. The next thing I want to do is to make sure that for this image right here, I can actually, let's say K-pop girl. And I have an asset right here that I dragged in previously called K-pop. And this is just something that I've been watching a lot lately on YouTube because it's showing up on my feed. Don't ask me why, but that's just how it rolls here. So if you modify this right here to be the K-pop, you'll see that that girl is now showing up there. So looking pretty good, I would say so myself. Okay guys, I'm gonna wrap up the episode right here. If you have any questions or comments about the LBTATools framework, make sure to leave your questions or comments down below. I'm gonna provide all of the source code for the 2 videos that you saw in today's lesson, as well as the previous lesson, down below in the comments section, so make sure to find the link there. Now for the Tinder Firestore course, I'm going to be providing some bonus lessons that demonstrate how we can implement the chatting feature that's available on this application. So make sure to check that out using the link below as well. That's going to be it for today. Keep on coding guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.